Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And first of all, congratulations to Vodafone, Vodafone Foundation, and Dasra, of course, for the real human work that is being done here. I run a company which is primarily focused on what we call digital transformation, which is the use of mobilities, cloud, social media, and big data in transforming corporates. So it's amazing to find how much potential there lies, and I think this report is one step in that direction to really transform the country, transform government, governance through mobility. I still remember 15 years back speaking at a seminar where there was a Professor Pankaj Gemawat from the Harvard Business School, where he spoke of the times which some of us who are too old in this room will remember, when half of India was waiting for a telephone and the other half was waiting for a dial tone. Okay, so I mean, that's the environment we come from. And today to talk about the 400 million plus, and I think we're talking about 1 billion mobile phones in the not so distant future, I think is absolutely amazing. I'm here as a student of mobility in e-government as much as any of you are, so that's why they kicked me up to be moderator. So we have all the experts who are going to talk. But I just want to share 3 things that really spark my interest in this phenomenon. The first is a conversation I had 3 years back with 2 very young, very bright graduates from Berkeley University, and Anu and Pranita. And these girls had just finished, they graduated from Berkeley, and they were heading off to Hubli in Karnataka to set up an entity called Nextdrop. And Nextdrop, the whole idea was very similar to what we just heard about, which is just, look, I mean, water is such a big deal in this country. And they said, look, if we can create a technology-based innovation where every citizen in the little town of Hubli can have access to when the next drop of water is going to come, the whole interface with government can become that much better. I got very interested as a person. We got very interested as a company. Today we're working with them in the city of Bangalore, in fact working with the Bangalore Water Supply Board to see how can we kind of really build a big data source around the whole water problems in Bangalore, and hopefully that works elsewhere. Second, I recently took over as chairman of NASSCOM Foundation. For those of you who are not aware, NASSCOM Foundation represents Tech for Good, which is all the stuff that the $160 billion IT sector in India does. We try and take some of those funds, CSR funds and otherwise, and bring it to the social sector. We had a discussion with the government of India about 6 months back, and they said, look, will you guys partner with us for the National Digital Literacy Mission? And the NDLM, or what they now call DISHA, which is Digital Saksharta Abhiyan, is very simple. It just says that if there are 1.2 billion people in this country, divide by an average of 5, it's 220 million families. Can we make one person in every family digitally literate? Now, before you get visions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, digital literacy has nothing to do with IT literacy. It's just the ability for, let's say, a farmer's son to be able to access information on a smartphone and say where are seeds available most cheap. A fisherman's son to access information to tell his father not to go out at 12:30 at night because it's high tide. So just the ability to use computers as well as mobile phones and everything else to just live a better life. And this was a very noble cause, and we're very skeptical with government always. So we said, put your money where your mouth is. How much are you willing to put on the table? They said, look, if you guys from the corporate sector and the rich IT sector can find 10 crores to put into this project, we'll find 90 crores. So of course, being equally suspicious, we should put your money first. And they did. Okay, I mean, 4 months back, they actually put 90 crores into the pot. We are now struggling. We've raised 2 crores. And we think, oh my God, we challenge the government and look what happens. Okay. But the good news is, NDLM is taking off. I mean, we have today over 40 digital literacy centers that are coming up in Pune, in Bangalore, in the suburbs. The government is saying that, look, we will take our 125,000 common service centers, CSCs, scale that to 250,000. So every panchayat in this country, which is 250,000, will actually have a digital literacy center. And I'm excited. Because the opportunity that it provides for people to just have access to technology, add to that the 1 billion mobile phones, and you have a complete revolution in the making. Last example, recently we set up this entity called Social Venture Partners, which some of you may be aware of, which is really individual social responsibility. And there are 4 of us on the board, and we're getting about 120 partners to contribute money, contribute ideas, contribute venture capital principles to philanthropy. And we're very proud of the NGOs we are funding and seeing how they're kind of evolving. And this is something that became so active in Bangalore and now in Pune, Mumbai, very soon in Delhi and Chennai, that we got an invitation from the Pune Municipal Corporation, both as a company, we are based in Zensar is based in Pune, and SVP Pune, to say, look, can we do something together to really make technology work for the Pune Municipal Corporation? So we've set up this entity called the Pune Action Task Force. I was just talking to Neera about it. And if you look at PATF, right from installing toilets across all municipal schools, ensuring that we use technology, which means that if the garbage can, for instance, is becoming 3/4 full, can there be sensors and Internet of Things which just sends a text message to the mobile phone of the operator who will come and pick it up? Otherwise you keep creating toilets which don't get cleaned, you keep creating garbage cans which overflow, and when you try and do some good, you inevitably do something bad in this country. So we're saying, how do we use technology to make sure that you're managing, I wouldn't call this governance, but managing the process while you keep getting CSR and ISR funds to come into the process. So, and when we look at it, and we were just discussing it this morning, there's so many opportunities to take a city like Pune, take any one of the 622 districts in this country, take all the states, and eventually nationally, and say, how can we make it happen? And as I think you rightly heard 10 minutes back, mobility is the answer. The mobile phone will always be accessible, and I think every person in this country will have access to a mobile phone. And if you can make some magic happen, I think we won't solve all the problems of this country, but we will certainly go 40% of the way in finding good solutions. So I'm excited to be a part of this panel. So the structure we're going to follow is we're going to get each person to maybe speak for 5, 7, 10 minutes, and top of the mind ideas on what they have on this topic. I'm going to throw it open immediately to the audience, because I know this is a very engaged audience. So we don't want to waste your time by having internal discussion. So we'll throw it open. If you dry up, I will ask questions. So that's the promise. So let's start with I wouldn't call him the professor because he doesn't like to be called the professor. Vivek Srinivasan from Stanford.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I come from a fairly sleepy little private college called Stanford University. And it's wonderful to be here with so much action happening, with so many innovations happening, and just so much energy that's there in the country and very much represented in this room. So it's inspiring to be here. It was great to hear a lot of you, and thank you, Dasra, for bringing this together, and thanks for Vodafone Foundation for organizing it as well. So I work with the Liberation Technology Program, and invariably technology fails me. Should I continue while we wait for this?
I think we should wait for the technology to work.
In India, technology always works eventually.
Handheld mic दे दीजिए. Handheld mic है क्या? हाथ handheld mic दे दीजिए.
Yes. Simpler than technology.
Okay, it does. So when we think about M-governance, the first thing that we tend to think about is how governments are rolling out the use of mobile phones, but I will take a slightly different step. After all, we are the government. So I want to talk more in terms of how citizens can leverage the power of mobile phones in making governments more responsive, democratic, and accountable. A part of this impetus comes from my own work with several rights-based campaigns in India, primarily the campaign to make education a fundamental right for every child, but much more so with the Right to Food campaign that I was coordinating for several years before I stepped up to the Western Shores. So in looking back at the work of activists and trying to think of how we can leverage the power of mobile phones, there are two activities that activists practically everywhere take up where I feel mobile phones could be of tremendous use. One, especially in India, with the tremendous success of the right to information movement, creating greater transparency of the government is something that a lot of activists who want better governance are involved in. And there's a lot of potential for using mobile phones in this space. I'll give some examples soon. The second is that invariably every single activist network that you come across will spend a lot of time in trying to find out how things are happening on the ground. So are the policies that governments talk about, are they actually taking place? Are the 24-hour primary healthcare centers really open? Are essential drugs that are supposed to be in PHC really available in the PHC? So that form of collecting information from a large number of people to find out what's happening on the ground is an essential part of activist activity, and this is another space where I think mobile phones can make a dramatic difference. I'll give some examples soon as well. So one of the things I'm engaged in is an exercise where we look at programs such as the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act and the public distribution system, and to try and see how we can make it transparent and accountable. And the method we follow here is borrowed from the social audits that were created by the Right to Information movement. Primarily what I'm trying to do is get all the records. Let's say if I have ration records, I try to go to beneficiaries and ask them, according to these records, it says that you have been given, let's say, 50 kg of rice over the last 5 months. Is it correct or not? What this process does is to bring corruption at the grassroots very, very clearly, because one of the main forms of corruption at the lower levels of bureaucracy is to fudge accounts. So you say that you gave 100 kgs of rice, whereas you actually give 50 kgs of rice. And in verifying this with the beneficiary, we found that it has a very powerful impetus to shake the system. But the process of organizing social audits with pen and paper is very cumbersome. So what you do often is you have to apply for the documents, and it takes you forever for the documents to come. There are many occasions when we had to go on a dharna to get the documents. And in fact, there was one official who told me that he would rather part with his life than with his papers. So you get the papers, and it takes a great amount of time for you to make sense of the papers, to ask a very simple question: how much grains were you given in the last 5 months? This is where the combination of the two factors becomes really critical. On one hand, you have e-governance, which is putting a lot of accounting in digital format, and a lot of it is getting increasingly available online. Particularly so with programs such as the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, where there is more accountability mechanisms than any other program I've seen anywhere in the country. So there you find all kinds of money that is being spent in every individual, in every village. You are able to get this online, but of course it does not reach people, or at least the NREG the traditional NREG beneficiary. The second factor which is helpful here is the explosion of mobile phone availability across the country. So even in Bihar, which is among the poorest states, every second family has a mobile phone. So this gives us an opportunity to take the accounts that are available online and pass it on to people, to tell them, in your name so much money was given, in your village the following road was laid, in your neighborhood the following school was constructed, so that people can verify that and they can do something about it. The second example about monitoring. Now, one of the groups that I work with, they monitor public health system in Maharashtra. Traditionally, they used to do surveys, so you would create formats, train people, they take the formats to the villages, fill it, post it, then the do the data entry, and then get the information out. And when they would take it to the health minister, the minister would often say, this data is 8 months old, we've already changed the system. So we enabled a system whereby they would take single issues on a given month, and then they would get feedback from people via SMS. And the turnaround time for this is as low as 2 weeks. Now, for a lot of activist work, for policy work, it's good to have very carefully done surveys on which you can reflect, write, and try to change policy over a long period of time. But when it comes to implementation issues, you would want to have the feedback in a relatively quick manner. So in that sense as well, having a system of collecting feedback from the NGO networks, but also from citizens and so on, can be a very powerful vehicle for creating accountability, which is an inherent part of activist work. Now, a lot of this kind of work is happening in the space of technology for transparency, accountability, and democracy. But one thing I wanted to kind of caution about is that a lot of technology projects believe in just taking technology and putting it out there, expecting it to be used by anyone and everyone. Whereas I believe that for technologies to have real impact, it has to be combined with action. You just can't go on a helicopter and drop pamphlets giving people information. You have to tie information with action. This is where I feel like in a country like India, where there's tremendous activism, where there are lots of people who are taking their lives and sticking their necks out and fighting on the ground, creating technologies that they can use will be the most important way of creating change. So this is where I want to make a pitch for the people in this room. On the one hand, we've been hearing a lot, I've been hearing a lot in the earlier part of the day about how we would want to support people who are non-confrontational. If you want governance, please support those who fight. There has to be some way in which we have to think about those who stick their necks out, those who stake their lives, and those who are willing to fight. I know that foundations, I know that corporations are not in a position often to do so, but at least we need to put our heads together and think creatively in supporting those who are actually willing to, fight and make the change, because real change will not happen in this country without somebody sticking their neck out. The second aspect of it is that for non-governmental organizations, for civil society actors and others to use such systems, we cannot just offer them large-scale solutions or things that they can tailor, because they're way too complex and they're doing much more important things. So this is where infomediaries become really, really important. I've been using Awaaz De, Neil Patel is here, and the simplicity of the system itself makes it so much easier for activists to adopt it in any part of the country that I've been able to introduce it in. So similarly, a lot of infomediaries can come into this space, help activists to use technology without spending too much time in learning about it and spending too much time in trying to implement it. So supporting infomediaries who actually have fantastic visions for creating such technologies that are so simple will also have a transformative impact. So let me stop here and then look forward to hearing to all of you.
But quick question to you, Vivek. Assuming you put all this technology in place, train people, make sure that they support the social sector, what happens if the government doesn't listen?
So to say that the government does or does not listen in a binary is always a wrong thing. The government always listens. The louder you are, the more they are forced to listen, and there is always an element of resistance. The positive factor is that today people are becoming more and more assertive, and the governments are being forced to respond to people more and more. So the fact that you have, who thought 15 years back that Bihar will create good roads, right? Who thought that the PDS across the country will improve? Who thought that corruption levels in a lot of other public services will come down? All of this is in response to growing pressure from the people, and it is in this context that we live. So I don't want to think in terms of whether governments don't respond or do respond. Governments do respond to people's voices. The role of technology is to amplify this a little bit. We will find a lot of lack of response at the end of the day, but that should not mean that we should not put our efforts in, because our effort will yield some fruit, even if it does not make us a perfect society.
Good. Thank you for that very positive opening. Can we switch to Nitai? What are your views, sir?
Well, I like to sort of put my thoughts in two parts. One is, the first thought is that to me and to our organization, Praja, we feel that mobile technology and the internet is something that is can become like a barometer for freedom. It is an instrument and a tool that can measure the amount of freedom that a country provides its citizens, allows its citizens. In fact, if you look at countries, there are two extremes. If you look at a country like North Korea, they have no access to technology at all. They don't allow mobile telephony at all. Whereas in the West, in some of the Scandinavian countries, it is becoming a fundamental right to access to Wi-Fi and to technology and to the internet. So it's a very interesting tool. You saw this tool being used a lot in the Arab Spring, in Egypt, in Tunisia, in other parts of the country. So it's exciting times, and I think we should really look at it as a pillar of, one of the pillars of keeping democracy and freedom going in any country, and the accessibility and the so that people can sort of access and express their views and opinions through internet and through the mobile phone, and the amount, or if there's any limitation for the expression, can become like a sort of a judgment of how much freedom is a part of your country or not. That's one aspect of the whole, excitement of mobile telephony and internet, and in India at least, I find that. The second part is our experience that we've had while using this technology. Praja as an organization has been experimenting and working on using this technology, and we started our first project in 2003, where we launched the first online complaint management system for the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai. And that was done in partnership with the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai. And we allowed citizens access to put in their complaints. We identified 95 typical complaints, gave them timelines, and also sort of said that if the work is not done within the particular timeline, it escalates to the senior officer. And that really excited and really brought in sort of a system which simplified the whole process. We got feedback from the municipal corporation, and the most cynical of municipal officers saying that this has helped them work better and able to perform their duties interestingly well. In 2003, we realized the fact that, of course, that not everybody had access to the internet, or even the mobile access was not that much. But at that simultaneously, we also started a call center, 1916 telephone number, which still exists. You can still go online. Go online as well as call up 1916 and put in your complaints. And you'll be surprised to know that most of your complaints are addressed. The reason I'm mentioning is this is the initiative that was taken by a government organization like the municipal corporation to try to bring e-governance in, and mobile, using the technology to improving service delivery. Also, we had, but we have to also understand that there's a sort of a flip side. Ultimately, it's a human being at the service delivery level who has to actually deliver. So we used to start getting complaints saying that, we had put in a complaint that garbage is outside my house or outside my office, and I get a feedback from the municipal corporation that the garbage has been cleared, but it still lies there. So we had to sort of say, okay, let's try to move this forward in the sense of let's start doing an audit whether they're actually cleaning up the roads or not if after receiving the complaints. And it was interesting. We had this survey done by, at that time, ORG Marg, where they said that 90% of the complaints, municipal corporation said that 90% of the complaints have been resolved, and the citizens said only 50% of the complaints have been resolved. And that was the gap, the 40% gap between what citizens are saying and what the government is saying. And in Mumbai, there are 24 wards. And in those 24 wards, there were variations in this thing. Some wards, the gap was smaller, and some wards, the gap was larger. And that was very fascinating because you really knew the performance of the wards as per the gap that happened during the survey. So that was an interesting experiment that we did, and it is still existing. It's still going on. The other thing is what the municipal corporation have themselves gone and done. People who live in Mumbai know that last 2 years back, the municipal corporation had a program where they allowed you to use the mobile phone to take photographs of potholes in the city. Now that was a huge success. What happened was that and reported, they take the photograph and report it back to the municipal corporation where the potholes are, and they would sort of fill up the potholes. Praja tracks all the civic issues and civic complaints, and we have like water supply, open sewage, roads, various other things that we track on the number of complaints coming in the municipal corporation. And we found that, for example, we had 10,000 complaints on water supply, or 2,000 complaints on the municipal dispensaries. But after the mobile application that came out, the roads jumped. It went up to 40,000 complaints. And what's happened is that the municipal corporation actually had a rollout program of wanting to bring out this for other services that the municipal corporation offers, and they're hesitating. They're hesitating because they're scared that if they put it out there, there'll be much more feedback, negative feedback that they're getting. So that is something that we should try to address and say that this is something that the municipal corporation should take as a positive feedback on what is happening at the true situation. So there's something that we should really, I think and discuss how we can look at this aspect of addressing their concerns also. A lot of times the government does launch interesting programs, but for some reason over a period of time there's very little follow-up, and then it sort of fizzles out. And that's what we don't want to happen. There'll be a lot of launches. There's the initiative has been taken, a lot of initiatives taken on this in mobile governance and e-governance and other things. But sometimes there's a pushback from the government, and that's something that we should be concerned about. Overall, I think there's a huge opportunity. I think mobile phones and technology is something that is there, and we should take advantage of that. And I think that's something that we should really look at promoting as a group, as our organizations and individuals. I'll sort of also pass on.
So Nitai, just as a follow-up question, you are obviously using mobile technology the way it exists, but as part of these applications, whether it's for Bombay Municipal Corporation or whatever, are you looking at some features that you wish were there in mobiles to make it much more effective?
Well, I think technologically, as far as features are concerned, it's all there. It's a question of how do you use that for particular issues. Like, for example, I think where the government has really not come in and using the mobile technology is in service delivery. I think that is an area that you really need to look at, whether it is birth certificates, whether it is getting an electricity meter, whether getting a water meter, whether you're putting in an application for your factory license or your shops and establishment license, I think we should see that the availability of features are there, the technology is there. We should get the government to actually use that technology.
Okay, great. So Balaji, I'm going to ask you for your views, but before that, let me put you on the spot by saying that there's a lot of talk in the corridors of power that the government wants to throw out all foreign providers and create this environment where every Indian has a smartphone of less than 5,000 rupees. Is there an opportunity or a threat?
So, I think, frankly, this government and the ones before this have done a lot to initially at least get foreign investment into the country. The fact that I remember when 21 years ago I joined this sector, guys said you're on a suicide mission, doing the mistake, Tatas don't, you're in Tatas, you better be in telco or Tisco and not into these newfangled entities. And so we moved along since then. And I recall, the reason I mention is because today in the operator space, we're talking about 100% foreign direct investment being allowed. Vodafone is the largest investor in the country. We've invested close to about, every year we invest about $2.5 billion. Since we've moved in 7-8 years ago, we've actually invested about 22 odd billion dollars already. So we are delighted that that's the broader direction the government has taken, which is to bring in global players as well as to bring the best of innovation in India and Indian players and entrepreneurs that can actually create large corporations and make a difference in the lives of millions of people. So I see that as the lay of the land. The second thing is I was in some form of fashion fortunate that I've kind of done the whole round in technology, mobile phones, as I was the MD of Nokia and before that Sony Ericsson before joining Vodafone recently and now in the service provider space. I say that because I recall 2011 I was in a forum and I actually said, someone asked, so mobile phones, where's the future? I just heard what was happening in the world over. I'd seen the telecom revolution where when you hit an inflection point, adoption of technology beyond 10% just goes stratospheric levels. And so when they asked me this question, I said, here, we are currently sitting at 3% of mobile phones, which are smartphones. We sell 160 million a year. 2015, I said every second phone in India would be a smartphone, and it will be about 200 million. It wasn't me just making a random statement. It was based on research which said that globally that's the kind of trend that tends to happen. Beyond 10% is the exponential use of a particular technology. Second, I had been blessed to see a revolution which started in 2003, 2004, and between 2004 and now, where we have 900 million subscriptions, about 650 million subscribers on the ground. Or even for that matter, if I look at it from that point of view, the world is, at least from Indian context, has changed dramatically since the government decided that they will integrate with the global economy, but more importantly, liberalize this sector. Phones today are 2,000 rupees for a smartphone, let alone 5,000. So those barriers have been breached, and so that's what has led to this exponential growth in technology in the hand of people. So that's really what it is. These are devices that have the same computing power that was there in an Apollo mission that went to the moon in the 60s, right? So that's the power that you're giving in the hand of people. Along with that, I would say that it's the evolution of an ecosystem that's helped us to get this far. Government policy I've already spoken about. I said players that came in the belief that there was a lot to do in India, whether Indian or multinational. Entrepreneurs, innovators that decided that they were going to basically bring their innovation and entrepreneurial skills, put their lives on hold, but to basically work in the space of mobile devices to provide applications, to provide vast services, as it was to be called in those days, to millions of people. And that's kind of borne fruition. A lot of social entrepreneurs, people who actually said, you know what, I see the benefit of what this tool can do to people. I see the benefit that it can do for me and my organization to scale up. And so all of these things have come together in a very meaningful manner that I can today say that all we need is partnership and collaboration and a large heart. What he said about 90 crores being put by the government already before you put your 10 crores from NASSCOM, what you've spoken about, Nitai, and Vivek. Truly, the conversations are out there. People are today using tools to collaborate, whether it's on social media, whether it's by just reading a lot, by just kind of observing what's going around in different parts of the world. And the fact that therefore, whether it's mobility, broadband or cloud and all these in a wonderful world of not just connected people but also connected things, if you may. You spoke about the garbage can and the overflow on that. That's a project that, for example, Vodafone has actually implemented in other parts of the world. Clearly, pilot to scale is only limited by our imagination and our ability to collaborate. So that's the broad sentiment that I want to leave here, saying that as long as all of us keep our hearts in the right place, as long as we have a Raja goal that we all believe in and are willing to listen and collaborate, this change is even sooner around the corner than later. And so I'm kind of very optimistic and hopeful that we are in the right space to make big changes in governance, in the lives of people and societies as a whole.
Thanks, Balaji. But if you look at your experiences around the world and you look at the future natural collaborators for a company like Vodafone, who would they be? Is it government? Is it the civil society? Is it entities like Dasra, or is it beyond that?
So we are a strong believer that change starts at the last mile. I'll just give you an illustration of our own our journey. Today we are about 200 million subscribers strong. We weren't so much a long time ago. The way it worked for us was when we created over time the capability to not just roll out networks. To your point, technology is easy to put, but adoption is what the tough part is. So as we were laying out our networks, we were also creating a field force, an armed force of people that were entrepreneurs. Today we serve 2 million entrepreneurs who are actually retailers that sell our mobile phones, either activate them or actually recharge them. And you can imagine that just like the sachets that get sold, shampoo sachets, in India the average number of recharges is 6 a month, average. So the poor person is probably going and just doing a top up every second day or third day. We would not be able to do it if we did not actually create an ecosystem that was last mile available. Why do I give this example? Because it's relevant in the question that you asked, which is very important. For us, therefore, the belief is people who are already there on the grassroots, all we need to do is help them with our experiences, whether it's commercial because we run businesses. And by the way, I also have a dual hat along with Madhu. Both of us are in the foundation as well. But can we actually do that crossover, if you may, of some of those experiences? Because the commitment and the passion is there, the people are there. If technology can be made to just get them together, to share from each other, because someone has started that journey long before, and we can actually reduce the time for them to scale up because they learn from someone else faster. That's a great model, and their technology can help, and networks like these can help. If we can actually get our experience of how capacity is built up and work with organizations that do it. Dasra, I just heard about all the wonderful work they do in terms of building grassroots leaders. We have this mobile for good. We actually identify panchayat heads, women, give them IT tools, just make sure that they can make a difference in their local area. All of these are to us models that we are very open to. All we say is we keep an open mind. We have no preconceived notion of what will work or what won't work. In fact, we're just keeping an open eyes and ears and saying, tell us what we know, what we can offer, tell us what we need to do, and we're more than happy to partner.
Fantastic. Madhukar, your views, sir? What is the future of collaboration?
Some of the comments that we heard today about government and adoption of technology, it occurs to me that when something as tectonic as we are going through right now happens, clearly there's a shift in power equations, and I think whether government adapts to it gradually, little by little, or forced to adapt it, I think that's for us to see. But that's really what we are living through right now, and I think it's going to change for the better. I mean, just the overall sort of observation. And as I thought about this topic of mobile, I actually wanted to talk about the stakeholders involved